The work session of the City Council of the City of Trinidad will now come to order. It is a go-to meeting. And tonight we have 5 items on there. There's one item in here that we may strike at this point in time. And I think there was some concern on the Stone Ridge Metro District discussion that I think we might have to have that in another session, maybe next Monday. So I think I'm going to go ahead and strike that particular item. I think I think you kind of agreed with that, correct?
Yes, sir, Mayor. That would be my request, please.
Okay, so we'll strike that item from there, please. Okay. Item 1, we're going to start with item 1. We have Jeff Shoemaker from the Greenway Foundation on river presentation. Mr. Shoemaker is, like I said, from the Greenway Foundation, and his interest, of course, is the rivers and what they can do and how should they be preserved and what they can do for a community. So what I'm going to do at this point in time is we'll turn it over, and I told him that we'd have about a 15-minute presentation from him, and then we'll get some Q&A maybe from council to see if you guys have any questions for him. So Jeff, why don't you go ahead and take it away, please?
Here, there we go. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, good evening, everybody. And by the way, Julie, it's good to see you. Thank you. Mayor, it's good to see you. Audra, thank you for engaging with me earlier or last week to hopefully members of council get you a forwarded email, because your first question has to be A, what the heck is the Greenway Foundation? B, who the heck is Jeff Shoemaker? And I don't know if I'm on 3 or C, why the heck is he jumping in on our meeting today? So let me start with the materials that if you haven't gotten them, I'll put that at my feet, but an email is prepared to give you 4 links, LINKS, to get a better idea of the 46-year vitae of the Greenway Foundation to revitalize rivers and reconnect communities. So we produced a video earlier this year. We have a link for our 2019, we call it the Greenway Current, which is an intentional play on words. And that gives you, we do that once a year, gives you a review of what we've done this past year. And we will start our 2020 version here in a few weeks. There's a PowerPoint that walks you through what the river was in Denver before, what it is more recently. And then lastly, there's an article that I asked to be published back in 2015, which was the 50th anniversary of the devastating 1965 flood of of the metro area South Platte River, 1,000-year disaster, worst natural disaster in the history of the metro area. And I'm a believer in remembering the past and honoring the past, both it's good, it's bad, it's ugly, and changing the bad and accelerating the good. And so I'm speaking to you, and I will not need 15 minutes, Mayor. I had the honor of being asked to come down a few weeks ago and spend a very fast-paced 24 hours in Trinidad. And I'm the 65-year-old, and I've been doing this crazy gig at the foundation for almost 40 years. And by the way, the foundation was founded by my father 8 years before I took it over. And I was asked to come down and just spend a day, get to know Trinidad as much as you can in one day, walk your river, the Purgatory, in one day, meet a good group of people, and let them know what we do in the Denver metro area. But I will tell you, we go beyond the South Platte River in Denver, and it's why the South Platte River watershed is our biggest vitae. But we've done work in all 7 metro counties. We completed 3 years ago a significant master plan for Clear Creek in Clear Creek County. And literally by coincidence of calendar, this very day I signed a significant contract to oversee the creation of an implementation plan for Fountain Creek in Colorado Springs. And so while our vitae is certainly strongest in the Denver metro area, we have no boundaries. We have no favorite river or waterway. As the mayor said, we're in the business of, again, revitalizing rivers and reconnecting communities. Every great city has a great river, and you have a great river. And the beautiful thing about Trinidad is it has not done to your river what Denver did to its very birthright. For those of you that have been at Confluence Park in Denver, it's where Cherry Creek hits the South Platte. There's a big REI flagship store that was a tramway building in its origins. The plaza, by the way, at the base of that building is named after my father, which obviously pleases his 65-year-old son. And the river in Denver was literally a flowing sewer. It is now home to the most valuable property within the city and county of Denver, and Cherry Creek is also that reality. When our work began on the river in 1975, property values within a half a mile of these two waterways were 20% less than anywhere else in Denver, and we did a return on investment study 3 years ago, and 3 years ago they were worth 40% more, and that's only going to increase. So, it doesn't matter about the size of the river, just about every, and this is not some high math, high science thing. We're creatures of water. We need to live by and need to survive water. And so we build in and around water, and Trinidad has wonderfully, delightfully done that. And so your river, and Julie can speak to this, and many others I'm sure on this phone call can speak to this. You are already and have already made significant changes and engagements and connections to your river. But when you get to be a guy of my age and my tenure, you get to the finish line faster. And I'm telling you, as strong as your river is today, its potential is limitless. So why am I here today? I was asked by the mayor to just introduce myself to you and let you know that as much as I care about the South Platte River watershed, as much as I care about the Fountain Creek watershed, I care about the Purgatory River. And if there's a way, in a modest way, a advisory way, an engagement way, that I can bring the successes we've brought over the last 4.5 decades to the Purgatory River, I'd be honored to do that. You're just right on the table, and I said this to the group when we met. That's the first time I visited, and I'm a Colorado, all but 6 months of the first 6 months of my life, I'm a Colorado native. And you can believe me or not, we've not met each other, only Phil, only Julie, I think on this call. I fell immediately in love with your city. I love the streets, I love the buildings, all of the brick buildings that you have. Phil, where did we go to dinner? The night I was there?
Oh, that was down at the singing place.
Yeah.
Was it
Reno?
Reno, yeah, Gino.
Oh, yeah.
Reno,
And I'm the guy that got talked into getting up and doing a karaoke version of I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. I do this really horrible version of Elvis Presley, but when your host says get up and sing, Shoemaker, you get up and sing. I have 2 degrees in music. So my point is, I got to walk a section of your river. I got to walk through your town. I stepped in and out of places and local businesses while I was there. And I don't need to tell you, and by the way, congratulations, and I said this to the mayor, your article 2 Sundays ago, I believe, in the Denver Post was spectacular and well-deserved. And so you're a city of great history and great culture and great significance, and you have not yet a fully realized river that can, again, further the enhancement and the engagement and the desire to come down, come up, come over to Trinidad and bond with the river and connect with it. So I'll wrap up with this. If you all feel there is any value in a modest initial way for the Greenway Foundation through my efforts to just come in and learn and connect and engage and communicate, I'm delighted to try to put a modest little initial consulting contract. It would be time and materials. So if I don't put in the time, I don't get paid. If I don't buy the materials, the gasoline, the hotel room, the dinner or whatever, then, if I don't do the work, I don't get paid. But I'm willing to throw something at you, and no harm, no foul. You can look at it, laugh at it, set it on fire and forget it. But I'm at the stage in my life again where I pick and choose where I work. I have an amazing staff at the foundation. They keep the train running on time. I'm just the guy that goes out, and after 38 years of my life and 46 years of this foundation, I get to pick and choose the places I work, and it would be a delightful bit of fun to further engage with the community. So Mayor, that's my spiel tonight, and you guys are busy people. I'll finish with this. I'm a former state legislator, and I've served on 2 higher education boards in the last few years, the CSU system and Metro State University of Denver. I only tell you that I understand what public service is about. And the enemy of democracy is apathy. And so my kudos to all of you on this call, whether you're an elected or a member of the team at Trinidad. Thank you for your commitment to public service. People underestimate it. People don't get it. That's just life, but I get it and I understand it. And I don't have to, I don't have to give you these platitudes or accolades, but the truth is easy. And what I just told you is the truth. So Mayor, I'll stop there.
Jeff, why don't you kind of give us a rundown briefly, and then we'll turn it to a Q&A as to what you saw and what your thoughts were on our river.
So
and any potentials or what you think.
So this is where thank you, Mayor. This is where I have nowhere to go but down right now, but I'll throw out some initial thoughts with the really important caveat that I got in at noon on day 1 and was out the door at 2 o'clock on day 2. So, but again, I walked, I looked, I viewed. Julie and I have talked since. I've seen, and thanks to aerials and pictures. I'll start with this. You have far less reclamation to do, and that may be an overkill word, than so many rivers I've seen and worked on have to do. Secondly, you've already put time, money, and effort, and you've got Julie's amazing organization and the champion work that they're doing and the grants they're pursuing and the advocacy, and you've got several other citizen support, community engagement. So you've never abandoned your river like Denver did. But there are some accessibility opportunities, there are some water quality and recreation and fishing opportunities. There are some economic development opportunities, and I've got to stop there because I don't want you to think I've even picked up a pencil, much less written some prescription on paper. But I see, and when I say I see and I smell, don't overtake the word smell. I can just sense. That's a better word. I can see and sense what your river can be and how it can become even more one of the front doors of your city. And so I'm going to stop there because if I go too much further, I'm going to get in trouble. And you guys, I have 4 daughters, 3 granddaughters, and a spayed cat in my house, so it's easy for me to get in trouble. And so I don't want to do that tonight. I'm just here because I've been asked to be here, and I love what I do. And I don't like doing small things. And one of my favorite sayings is, all great things had small beginnings. You have already done more than small beginnings, but you have a great opportunity, as if you don't know this, with your river and its potential for your city, for its economics, for its environment, for its recreation. So Mayor, I'll stop there.
Okay, let's go ahead and turn it over to questions from council. Ms. Grego, do you have any questions for Mr. Shoemaker?
Good evening, Mr. Shoemaker. I met you at the meeting down at Walters that day as well, so I have a better understanding of what your foundation is capable of. So what would be our first step as a city? Just engage your services and then give you an estimated budget, and then you go from there?
Thank you. I would propose as a starter and I don't expect an answer tonight, and I'm not sure it's fair to even ask. Well, I'm not asking for it. I'm not sure it's fair tonight for a decision to be made. I think you all need to discuss this. My approach would be to give you, in turn, a basic consulting proposal. Again, my hourly fee is what it is. The only expenses I'd incur is gas, lodging, and a cheeseburger or something. And again, because it's a time and material thing, if the work doesn't happen, there's no outlay of cash. I'd make it for a year. I'd try to put it forward to where it starts in 2021, lasts a year. You can terminate it anytime you want. And then I think I start with just conversations. Just continue to get to know the citizens and the buzz of Trinidad and how that intertwines. So some of it would be spending dollars on engagement and connections, but I don't want to try to go into something where I walk down and in meeting number 2, I throw something down on paper saying, here's your blueprint, make it so. That's not how these work. It's not how I work. So I think it would be just letting me put a proposal before you with no assumptions or expectations and see what you all think.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Grego?
No, I have none.
Okay.
And you're right, Mr. Shoemaker. We can't make any kind of motions or decisions in the work session.
Right.
So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Williamson?
Again, thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate that. Two things that struck me about your talk there, and I really appreciate them, is one, when you described the potential of our river here, you used the word limitless. I think that's worth noting. I have the belief that to some degree or another, all of us on this meeting probably believe that. Everyone's definition of limitless is probably subject to interpretation there. But one thing is for certain that it's really incredibly important for us to do that right. The second part that I would say is the best way to get somewhere is to talk to someone that has been there. It seems to me that you have been at our destination that we want to arrive at. I'm making the argument for your services. I understand that, but that's my feeling on this matter, and I think that it would be it would just be a real boon for Trinidad to move forward with that. That's about all I have, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Shoemaker. I appreciate your time and you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ogletree?
Good evening, Mr. Shoemaker. I'm really glad to hear from you. I heard a little bit about your presentation at Walters, and I've been very excited to learn about what you do. My only question is, what do the cities that you've done this for before, what do they do with your consultant's report? Do they use it to raise money through grants, or what do they do with it?
Thank you. Solid question. It depends on, and I'm not trying to be vague, but it depends on the requested product that is put into play. I'll give you an example. What we did 10 years ago for the city and county of Denver called the River Vision Implementation Plan that we plopped on the community's desk in 2011 has resulted in over $70 million of projects, recreational, environmental, flood control, and water quality. We are doing a similar version, and it's entitled the Fountain Creek Watershed Vision Implementation Plan. One of my limitless corny sayings is a vision is only as powerful as its ability to be implemented. So coming out of the gate and not knowing, the first thing would be, again, to engage with all of the people, and this is a broad list because I'm at the 0 point, all of the people who are smarter and more knowledgeable than me about what's out there now, what plans are out there, what documents have been put together, and then how do we assimilate them and take them from plan into implementation. And yes, part of what we typically do with an implementation plan is engage with the community right away. So when the typically 3 to 5 top priority projects come out, they have been vetted to be priority projects because there is public, private, philanthropic, and political engagement in seeing them go from idea to reality. So part of that is identifying sources of funding from, again, Corny Shoemaker, all four legs of the Progress Chair. And again, that's private, public, philanthropic, and political. And I will say to all of you who are electeds, if I have to pick a favorite leg, pardon me, of that Progress Chair, it's political. Because you are the city's leaders, and so go your decisions, so go public policy. So that would be, at the onset, what we'd start to converse about. And the old line, I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, name the movie. I think that's all I'm trying to do. I do a bad Humphrey Bogart, I won't do it, okay? And so I think that would be, it's just, or I can sing the song, I'm the guy, again, 2 Degrees in Music, I can sing Getting to Know You. You don't want to hear it tonight, but that would be part of it, is just beginning a conversation. And at the end of the day, literally, dating myself again, think of me as a version of the Lone Ranger. I come in, I do my voodoo, I put my silver bullet on a desk, and I ride out of town. And then it's your plan to take and run. I don't yet live in Trinidad, but I'm going to be visiting Trinidad more, and put that down on the minutes. Nancy and I are going to be visiting when COVID lets us visit. We're going to be coming down and spending a weekend and just letting Nancy get inspired like I was. So it's a just start to craft a plan, but make sure it's a plan that's real. You know, the only thing worse than not designing a vision is designing a vision, rolling up the blueprints, putting it on the shelf and saying, I'm all done. We don't do that. That's almost worse than no vision at all.
I agree. Thank you. It's a great answer.
Mr. Shu?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't too sure. I just, I think it's really good that we do something with a river. I think it'd be a great asset to the community, and I think that's kind of where we need to go. Just a question on my part. Did you have any of your foundation do anything on the Pueblo River Walk, since they've done such a great deal up there?
We did not, but, and it's been many years now, a colleague of mine in the legislature, he has one of the craziest last names in the world. His name is Steve Arviskow. And he actually, I ran and won in '86. He came in 88, and he took out a very significant incumbent. And the title of his bumper sticker is "What the heck is an Arviskow?" And so Steve ran the Heart Project for a number of years, and it's a magnificent project. It's their version of the San Antonio River Walk, right, where a river is, you know, diverted, piped, buried, and so it becomes a very controllable concrete channel. I've never done a project like that. I've done a version of it on Cherry Creek and Lodo called, and you know, marketing is marketing. So it was called Venice on the Creek. And we took a 12-block section of the creek in Denver from Larimer Square down to Confluence. And I think we had the smallest locks and the smallest punt boats in the United States of America, but we found a way to make Cherry Creek deep enough and flat enough to where we did a summer concession for 10 years. So that's the closest I have to what Pueblo has done on the Arkansas River. But it's a marvelous project. I don't see that. I'll just go out on a limb and say I have no concept of that in my brain for the purgatory. There's too much wonderful, natural, indigenous, native landscaping that's there. That's part of the beauty of it. Is that you can get, isn't it great when you get in the middle of an urban river and you don't hear the city? What you hear is nature. What you catch is a fish, more than you catch a can or a bottle. So I haven't done Pueblo, but I know of the project, and Pueblo should be proud of that project. I don't know the standing of it right now. I haven't. Steve left a few years ago, and it's my fault I haven't kept up.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. DeBono.
Mr. Shoemaker, first of all, thank you for your thoughtful insight and information, very informative. One of my questions was already answered about providing recreational activities and concepts to this area. So other than that, I don't really have anything else.
Okay. Mr. Goodall.
All right, I just wanted to say thank you for your time. I appreciate you very much, and I'm really hopeful that at some point we will have a chance to work together on our beautiful river area, because it's what a great asset it is, and I think the opportunity has been there for a while that hasn't been taken advantage of, and I'm hoping maybe we can take advantage of that together, sir.
But my only response is that is a ZZ Top. That's on, brother.
Uncle Billy?
Yeah. Man, you gotta get
Billy
some
Gibbons.
shade. You gotta get some shade. Thank
Hey,
you.
Jeff, and this is to you as well as city council. Like I said, the thing that I think of, and I brought this and I mentioned this to city council prior to today's meeting, is that, if we can do something with our river to build it up, it's an additional amenity, which I really look at, because what we are trying to do is we're trying to attract more tourism into the community where people will come in and stay longer and do some other things. And if we could do something with the river, it's the third leg of what I see as what's been happening in Trinidad. Well, the first leg, of course, has been started out with the Space Creek project. The second one is Fisher's Peak. And now if we could do something with the river, now we have another additional amenity for people to want to be able to come and visit, and instead of staying just one day, they may want to stay 2 or 3 days. So along with everything else that we can possibly provide down the road. So, but just preserving our river to the best that we possibly can is really critical, and I'm sure that the agricultural, the farmers and ranchers would be very happy to try to do something, especially with some of these water-eating trees that we have down there that suck up a lot of water. And of course, Julie knows all about that. So anyway, that's my thought, and I think that we can try to do something. And what I'll do is, go ahead, Jeff.
Just two things, and I'm sorry, I just want to let you know this. One of the greatest joys in my life in the last, and believe it, it's been 2 decades, is the completion of the Chatfield Reservoir Reallocation Project. There's and working with the Army Corps of Engineers and all these water interests to allow Chatfield Reservoir through the rebuilding of Chatfield State Park to accommodate 20,000 acre-feet of additional water. And through that, and by the way, I'm not going to overstate this, but I come from Iowa farm stock. My great-grandfather homesteaded, my grandfather, then my uncle, now my cousin. It's a 315 acre dryland farm. My cousin lives on the farm, owns 300 acres. As long as I only show up twice a year, I get to own 15 acres. And I've gotten to know the really solid ag, cattle, rancher interests in Weld County. And they are some of the most marvelously straightforward, honest, feet on the ground people I could ever meet. Second thing is, I failed to mention this, Mayor. Everyone, I'm also the executive director of the Colorado Parks Foundation, which my father and I founded in 1985. We're 35 years old. We are a private foundation that gives grants to state and local parks across the state. And to date, we're at $1 million+ and running. And we were behind the scenes on Fisher Peak, but we were involved. And there is a standing grant offer for us to be part of doing some big woohoo shout out, either at the entrance or someday a visitor center at Fisher's Peak State Park. So I applaud all of you, and I mean this. I applaud all of you for the vision and the community gathering that made that happen, because you're right, Mayor. It's a game changer. So I will stop there. I probably used up my welcome here.
I was going to say, Mike, because it sounds like there's a good consensus of maybe wanting to move forward with something. Would it be okay if Jeff maybe gave us maybe a proposal of what his fees might be and how that would work, and then we could bring it forward to council for an okay or no? Would that be what you would think?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I think that's the start, is if Mr. Shoemaker could shoot something down so we can at least start at our levels to look at it, and then hopefully bring something forward.
Jeff, what will happen is probably Mike will get, because I don't know if Mike, if you have his email, but I know that Audra has his email now. Get it from her for any correspondence that you guys need to have. And Jeff, go ahead and get that information together and get it to Mike, and
Okay.
then we'll have a further discussion on it.
I'm delighted. I'm excited if this ends up being something moving into hopefully, prayerfully, the last year of COVID. Wouldn't that be nice? And so I'll put together a modest, quote unquote, something, and my goal is I'll have something to you before the end of next month. And then you can all review it, look at it,
Okay.
hack at it, whatever you want to do, and then let's see where things go. It's been a delight to meet you all and to sit before you. I'll finish with this. If I get involved in something, guys, I'm in. And but I never forget who I work for. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you for the presentation.
It's my pleasure. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Julie,
Happy
look at your
Thanksgiving.
face. The whole time we were together, you were masked up. So yay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All righty.
All right, let's go on to item 2, which is nonprofit funding discussion for the marijuana sales tax. Mike, do you want to or is that you, or is that going to be Cheryl, or what? Where are we at?
Well, sure, I'll kick it off, Mayor. What staff is asking is that City Council consider how we move forward with the current process. It was the last time we did it. It kind of hit a wall. Maybe possibly because of COVID, and at the time we didn't understand how much money we would have and how these nonprofits would work. Per the resolution that's in place, we have 5% agency level support that's allocated. When that was allocated, staff put together a process, an application process. We had a lot of agencies come forward. We had to go back and forth with each agency to fill out the application, to get all their paperwork in. And it was very time consuming. And then, of course, when we brought it to council with staff recommendations, it didn't go that way at all. So without wanting to do that again, just wanted council's opinion if they thought that process worked well or did not, or if we still want to continue with the 5%. I'm open to hearing council's thoughts on it.
One of the things that I recognize, and I'll start this off briefly, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of council, is, with staff, they're buried with a lot of their work that they do. And, according to the information you gave us, you said that it was very time consuming for staff to do on top of everything else they also have to do. So I don't know if, the process is good, but if it's taking away a lot of time from staff or other very essential things, what is the other thing that we could do with this money or part of the money? I know that we allocate some money right now to the foundation to control some of the nonprofits. I don't know if that's an avenue that maybe council wants to consider, but I just thought I'd bring that out, and I'm trying to be considerate of staff's time. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll start off with Ms. Grego.
I'm in agreement with you 100%, Mayor. I never realized the paperwork that's involved in this. And I've said this many times, I don't know what the first council that had to deal with marijuana funds, what their idea was with nonprofit. But I think we've done our fair share. and giving to nonprofits. And I think the better way to go from here forward is to try and make Trinidad the best place we possibly can. Use those funds for other projects, and that way the nonprofits in of themselves can make a profit or generate funds so they can maintain their own destiny, if nothing else. But I'm in total agreement. This has been the 3 years I've been on council. The nonprofit donations have been a nightmare to try and maintain.
Okay, Mr. Williamson?
I don't have the historic reference that you guys are speaking of there, but is there an easy way to, this is probably a really silly question, but is there an easy way to quantify how much money has been given away to nonprofits versus what benefit has been gained from that? I mean, is there anyone that can speak to that?
I think Mike or Cheryl or Otter would probably be the ones that would have probably that answer. If they could even give them a two, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I suppose we could.
I guess what I'm looking for, Mr. Valentine, is like, obviously I don't expect an answer tonight, or I wouldn't expect anyone to go running down a deep rabbit hole to get dollars and cents, but I guess, it sounds like a lot of effort on a lot of people's parts, and is the result worth the effort, is what I'm saying. I think that's a discussion that would be worth having, in my opinion. That's my opinion on it.
Mr. Williamson, if I may, one of the things that I think that giving to the nonprofits has not only been since we've had marijuana funding. I think staff has had to deal with this for many years because they have been giving some money in years past to nonprofits. So this issue is, old, and it goes quite a ways back. So, Mr. Valentine, why don't you go ahead and pipe in, please?
Sure. Quantifying the amount is easy because we have Cheryl and she's good at what she does. We can quantify the amount. Quantifying the value to the city would be a harder nut to crack. I'm sure if you ask the nonprofits, they will tell you that we've helped them out immensely and they do great things. But I will kind of get back to you. I mean, the process, like Mayor mentioned, it was pre-marijuana, and we used to have agencies come before council in council chambers and present. Each one of them presented. Of course, there was always limited funds like there are now. They always would ask for as much as possible, and then vetting those out and giving up the money is always a tough process. So we will get you the number over the last, maybe 5 years. It'll give you kind of a pre-marijuana and post-marijuana kind of an idea on money spent. But yeah.
If you look at the numbers that Cheryl's throwing up on the screen, they're pretty substantial.
I guess with those kind of dollars, it's probably worth some exchange on it. That's my input.
Okay, Ms. Ogletree.
I'm not clear on what the alternative is that we're talking about to the way that we're doing it now. I have some questions about the way that we're doing it now, but has someone floated an idea of how we would do this alternatively?
Well, the other alternative, the only other alternative that we have right now is, like I said, in 2018 and 19, I believe, we've given like $10,000 or $11,000 to the Trinidad Community Foundation, and they have developed a way that they distribute and go out and solicit nonprofits, and they do all of the engaging with the nonprofits, and they make the selection, and then they bring that final process to council for final approval. That's what happened in 2019. So it takes that pressure off of staff to have to go through all of this and do all the follow-up.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about, whether or not that's a good idea, rather than
Yeah, whether that's a good idea, or we just keep it in-house, or, you know.
Well, I think if we kept it in-house, I think as I look through this, if this is the attachment to the agenda is the application that the applicants have to fill out and that the staff has to go through, I think it probably is needlessly cumbersome, I would say. Also, I'm not really sure where some of the program objectives that we're shooting for came up from, because they seem like they're fairly economic in their point of view, and that's a fine thing. But I think nonprofits are also about dealing with social ills like domestic violence or child abuse or things like that. And when I think of nonprofits, that's what I think more about than economic advancement. So, I talked with someone who's on council, and was telling me that the way that it worked before, she felt comfortable with. And so it may be that that's a good idea, but I would want to be able to communicate to the Trinidad Community Foundation what we're hoping for as a community to accomplish with the money, because it's turning over the reins to them as to what's going to get money and what's not going to get money. So I don't know what the comfort level at the city is about that.
Just one thing that everybody may want to know is that one thing has always been a problem. If the city handles part of the money, and whether it's this foundation or some other group handles the money, is the double dipping. You may have one organization that applies to both, and being able to make sure that that does not happen has been an issue.
Okay, so you think this would limit that from happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
It should.
Well, I'm open to changing it if it doesn't seem to be working and accomplishing what we want it to do. I'm open to changing it.
Mr. Shu?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sure can.
Okay. Yeah, I was on council a while back, and we used to do this without the marijuana funding, and it got to be a hassle sometimes. But I think it's important to realize there are a few nonprofits out there that could really use some of the money. I'm not saying allocate all of it to it, but I think it's a good idea, as Karen and you have both stated, about having the foundation handle some of the work and do that. So I'm pretty much in favor of that too.
One of the things they do is they go out and they solicit,
Right.
Anybody who wants to put in for money for it is what they do. So
Yeah,
so that's
I've had that dealt before. Thank you, Mayor.
okay. Mr. DeBono?
Well, I haven't been on council that long, but I did a little bit of reading. I know, granted, the nonprofits they're an essential part of any community, as we know, but I believe any city needs to prioritize where the funding should go, and not just for the sake of just doing a handout, but for the nonprofit organizations to see which ones are benefiting not only them, but the city as well.
One of the things that we can do is we could get the foundation to send us a copy of what their guidelines are for determining how they give out the grants. That way council will be aware of their process, and it might probably make you guys more comfortable as to what they're doing.
And Mayor, if I could please, I don't mean to interrupt.
Sure.
I just want to make as part of the record that Ms. Navarrete was giving us information while right as Councilman Williamson was asking the question, and I just want to say, because this is kind of communication amongst everyone, and so I sort of want to make it part of the record and don't want to get accused of doing anything untoward. But Ms. Navarrete said it was 290,000, the nonprofit funding in 2018, 188,500 in 2019, and 40,625 in 2020. If I got those figures right. I just wanted to say that for the record, and that was communication that she was giving us while everybody was speaking. Did I get those figures right?
I think you did.
Okay, good. I'm sorry for interrupting, Mayor.
That's okay. That's fine. I'm glad you clarified that. Mr. Goodall.
You bet. I agree that there needs to be some changes made in an organization like TCF would be a good one to disperse a lot of the funds, but there are exceptions to everything. Even though I'm no longer part of Trinidad Blues Fest, they're a large recipient of this money before marijuana and after, and that there are organizations like the Blues Fest and Artocade that ask for far more money than what TCF does give out, and in return the amount of tax dollars spent and people brought to town, the increase in tourism and everything should be kept in the back of our minds somewhere for organizations that do ask for a little more money and give a little more something in return. But I'm all for finding a system that works better with less work for our staff. And in these COVID times, I'm always thinking of ways for when we go forward. We're looking at trying to find ways to boost our economic development and everything else. It might be time with COVID to take some of this money and get it into a fund for incentive program, cut this money in half and get some money put back for some programs that are going to, I think, pay big dividends in the future. So maybe not only time for a change in this program, but for maybe a change in the amount of funds that goes into the nonprofits, and stick some of this money into a fund for an incentive program for building businesses, housing, try to find something to boost along them lines. And this could be a good avenue for some money in COVID times that's not being spent for nonprofits.
Okay. Okay, from what I'm hearing, I think maybe it'd be a good thing to do is, like I mentioned a while ago, is to have the foundation send a copy of their process to Mike, and then he could distribute that again to all of us and see what that process is. And then I think the other thing to do would be for, Mike, along with staff, to determine that dollar amount that would go to TCF or whatever organization is going to distribute the money. That would be something that they could do for council. At this point, Mike, do you have anything that you'd like to add to the conversation?
No, Mayor, I appreciate all the discussion. We are, by resolution, we put 65% to operation and payments of programs, 30% goes to our reserve fund / rainy day fund, and 5% goes to agency support. That's how it's set forth. So that 5%, I think, or I don't think, when this was, set forth, the amount of money that we've been receiving has been tremendous. I'll just say that. So I think we may, as Councilman Goodall said, maybe look at the percentage that we put toward nonprofits and maybe do something else. But a lot of good ideas. I will get with TCF to get their granting document, their process, and we'll bring something forward.
Okay. Ms. Garrett, you're online. Do you have any suggestions? Because you've been the one that's been doing that probably with staff.
Mayor, I'm not sure. Audra, is she online? I'll let her answer, but I believe that's her. Oh, good.
I am online. So I appreciate the conversation as well. I really wanted council to revisit this whole topic of the nonprofit funding, because it is a challenge, and it's been a challenge for as long as I've been with the city. I remember when everyone used to go in front of city council during a work session and present to city council, and then council would have to make the decisions, and there was a lot of duplication of services that was happening. So you would have, for instance, an arts organization, and there was another arts organization, and they basically were serving the community in the same way. And it was a challenge for council. It would take up a lot of time. And then on the back side of it is trying to make sure that they're reporting everything properly and turning in the documentation needed so that we know that those funds are being used correctly. So we got past that with our budget process. You know, we have certain nonprofits in the budget that are line items in the budget, and then the remaining money has been sent over to TCF for them to distribute. That's been a great process. They're very diligent about making sure that they're not going beyond the scope of what the money is supposed to be used for. They make sure the reports come in. They've been very diligent with that money. And with respect to the percentage, I like Councilmember Goodall's idea with splitting that and actually funding incentives. I think that we've lacked in that area for a very long time, and now probably more than ever is an appropriate time to be thinking that way with that money, and then still giving some to some of the nonprofits. But I really do appreciate council's consideration in thinking about using the community foundation to distribute the funds. I can't describe to you how hard it was to try to vet the last group of applicants, and then with COVID, it just nothing fit into the categories, and what we thought we presented was not really where council wanted to land with it. So I appreciate it. That's probably all I have to say, unless you have questions.
Okay. Council, have come up with any other questions? None? Okay, well, go ahead and take it from there, Mr. Valentine, and get a hold of, I guess, the director or the chairperson of the foundation and see what you guys can do. Okay, we'll go on to item, we skipped item 3. That was the Metro, Stone Ridge Metro discussion. We're going to bring that up in a different discussion. So on to item 4, direction of committing funds. That's where I think we're going to have to have a pretty good discussion, and unfortunately we have to have this done by the end of the year. I don't know if we have, after this, if we might even have to have another conversation before we put it to a final vote. I'm not sure. It just depends on how it goes tonight. So Mr. Valentine, why don't you give us a rundown as to what you think?
Sure. So at council's direction, I got with almost everyone, and because the year end is coming up, I put together a spreadsheet, and hopefully, Johanna, can you share Cheryl's screen? She has the spreadsheet, I believe. Anyway, we'll see if she puts that up. But I put together a list of projects and very hastily put together kind of a quick description and an estimated cost. Those estimated costs are, basically shooting from the hip because of the time frame. So Cheryl's got that screen up for your viewing. They're in no particular order. I just put them down as council brought them up to me, and go figure, the very first one is Riverwalk improvements. Not knowing what we were going to do with the Riverwalk, I threw an estimated cost of $1 million at it. The we currently have 100,000 dedicated in CIP projects toward that. So if you go over to the right in the columns, I have CIP projects, there's 100,000. A column called utility projects, because some of those comments were for utilities. And then just a stab at what to direct that amount. This by no means is anything set in concrete, but I would just go down the list. Trail development and construction. We know that we're working toward our outdoor rec tourism. We have Fisher's Peak State Park. We have hopefully a grant coming forward that's going to kind of lay out a master plan for trails and infrastructure development. I didn't have an estimated cost to even discuss that. I don't know if council wants to put some committed toward that. And our highway exits improvements, they're going through the exit 11 roundabout design in CDOT as we speak. They only have a limited amount of funding. In discussions I've had with them, they may be asking the city if we want to do any kind of enhancements in those roundabouts. They would ask that we possibly contribute. I threw 100,000 at that, and Bjorn and Maine 50,000, not knowing what we would do there. That 5 Points, that's the Colorado and commercial exit, to do some kind of a roundabout, change the configuration of how we enter the city. That's $1 million. I put that as a CIP project, but it could move over. Exit 15 is the Goddard Avenue exit. It's just kind of blah as you come in there. We can enhance that, to make it a better entrance at that end. Yeah, Morrow exit at Industrial Park is another, and I threw some money at it. Again, nothing set in stone, no concrete estimates, just discussion. The space to grade to complete the commons area, it's 500 to 750,000. I put 500,000 there. I don't know if council wants to commit there. The Fox Theater, you know that we have that estimate from the Alliance and the developer of 18 million. We have in our CIP budget 66,000 in match and 200,000 if we get that DOLA grant that's been applied there. I put Welcome Center / Amtrak station there. That was talked about. I don't have an estimate for that. One of the big ones that I can really appreciate is infrastructure improvements, our sewer, our water, our electric grid, our gas mains. If I put a number in there, it would be huge. I think we need to eventually go through the strategic planning process that we wanted to do pre-COVID through our retreat with council. All those are utilities, so there's a utility column there. Not sure if we want to mix general fund monies that we have into utilities, so there's nothing there. But also with infrastructure, it's storm drainage, it's curb gutter, it's ADA improvements, it's all that. So we just continue to go down the water treatment plant. Our estimate for that in early 2000s was for a water treatment plant below Trinidad Lake Dam was $11 million. Watershed improvements. we've had a lot of forest fires. We've been filling out Bill and actually Julie Knudsen have been instrumental in going for grants for watershed mitigation, and it's an ongoing thing, but our watershed is huge. So these ideas were what council threw out there. They're here. I don't know how to quantify them quite yet. Water transmission line from the plant down. That is in that same study that I mentioned, the water treatment plant. That study shows $12 million, and that's for a new line from treatment to Jansen tank. These numbers are old. I think it will be a little bit more. Garfield lighting, improving that lighting on Garfield. That's an estimate just to add lights, nothing else. It's a narrow street that needs some work, but just adding lights is around $35,000. I put that toward a CIP project rather than to commit it over to this larger amount that we need to commit. Monument Lake, it's another question mark there, but through our CIP budget, we allocate $150,000 there every year. West Main Street, I've brought this up several times, from our entrance where you come off the highway on Main, basically from Santa Fe Trail to Anima Street. There's a 3-block stretch there that is not inviting as it is as you get downtown and you see the streetscape with the period style lighting and the bricks in the sidewalk and the plantings and everything. I think that's critical. That estimate is $3 million. I put that in the directed amount. Over to the right, covered swimming pool. There's so many options, whether we build a facility that is permanent or they have kind of like the dome that the Broncos practice in, where it's just a dome over the swimming pool. There's been many back and forth discussions on that. It would be an amenity. It would be great to have a covered pool for year-round operations, but the maintenance and operation costs of that are very prohibitive because you still have to staff it. You still have now you've enclosed all those chlorine gases, so you have to have a specialized HVAC system. There's a lot there, but that costs $6 million. I didn't carry anything over. Another idea, broadband service to the community. No estimates there, but I think we have 3, if not 4, broadband service providers between CenturyLink, Seacom, Comcast Infinity. There's another that is satellite, so I don't have an estimate there. Used lumber building remodel, no estimate. Sorry, didn't have time to put something together there. One thing that was brought forward from the initial conversation was San Pedro Street. All those bricks, it's on a historic preservation kind of a resolution that was passed back in the early 70s. We did a Brick Street study in 1998, and the cost was $5.5 million, and I upped it based on 20 years ago. And then we actually have already economic development. We have funding in the land acquisition line item of 941. That's included in the overall cost, and we've carried that over to the directed amount. So it's a lot of information for council to look at, but if you look down, we have a commitment target amount of $6.6 million that we should be committing. Just the 3 items or 4 items that I put up there, and I put some big ones in there, but Main Street is $3 million. We have a remaining balance to commit. The Riverwalk improvements, $1 million. And economic land acquisition is 941. So that all adds up to 4,941,000. Nothing set in stone again, council. I apologize for not having stronger estimate numbers for you, but we could just, if you want to mess with the spreadsheet, Cheryl could add numbers in that's got formulas. We have 1.659 million there to commit. We can take Main Street down to 1 million. All these funds are for, hopefully we can leverage all these amounts and get granting for these. So with that, I'll take any comments from council.
Before I turn it over to council, one thing I wanted to mention is this is on, I forget what page number it is. In the information, Mr. Valentine, that you gave us, says the city has an unassigned fund balance of 12 million, 7 million and change is what you're talking about. Now it does say that we can retain 5%, was it 5 million? Or the percentage for of some amount, if I'm correct, for unassigned. Is that correct, Mr. Valentine?
Correct. So, and Cheryl is on, she could.
Now is that amount off of the 12 million or off the 7 million?
So, Mayor, that number has grown since I just provided the same documentation and council communication from our meeting in October. There's been several things that have been added. Marijuana has increased. Cheryl could speak to this all, but rather than the 5.4 million to commit, it's jumped up to 6.6 million. The 7 million is already out there for operations, for emergency operations to keep the city going, or compensated absences for Eagle Rock, 500,000 for fleet. So we were looking at the remaining commitment of 5.4 million, but Cheryl, in conversation with her and because of what's happened, we're looking to target 6.6 million for directing and committing.
One other thing before I turn it over to the rest of council is something I did not see in here is once we make a commitment on these, do we have a time frame to expend those dollars or change them? I guess I know we have the opportunity to change them, so that would be a question I think that we would like to have. One other item I'm going to throw out there, and that just came up tonight, and I don't know what Jeff Shoemaker's proposal would be, but that would probably be something that we could look at possibly too. So anyway, let's go ahead and get with council to see what their thoughts are. Ms. Grego?
Well, thanks, Mike, for all the work you did on that. This is a really good base, and it all depends on what direction the council wants to go. I mean, I think it's imperative when you've got the type of money that we're putting into La Puerta that we can try. I think the 5 Points Colorado commercial project, I think that's got a lot of potential, and I think it's really good. We have to draw those people off the interstate, and that 5 Points area, as it is now, is not. It's hindering the growth of the North Commercial Street part of Trinidad. I think that's a great idea that we add that in, and when we have $659,000, I think the Garfield Avenue lighting is also very important, especially now. I've gotten several calls from people that are upset because it's so dark, and with the detours, I think that's a good project too. I think what Council and Mike have done with the Animas Street, Santa Fe Trail, the Riverwalk improvement, and the ED land acquisition is spot on. I just think that one on 5 points is essential as well. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Williamson.
I really like the idea of the 5 points there. I agree with Councilwoman Griego. Also on the West Main, I think that's critical. Mike, I don't mean like line item by line item, but that $3 million that you have in there, what would that get us? I mean, you're not going to be able to improve privately owned buildings and stuff, but how much curb appeal would that $3 million buy us, if that makes sense? I don't mean line item by line item.
No, understood. The reason it's $3 million, the actually curb, gutter, the brick inlay, and the lighting are minimal to that $3 million. If we do all this surface work and we improve the surface, we need to take care of the infrastructure that's under it, the water main, the sewer, any gas mains.
As far as curb appeal, it is primarily sidewalks, lighting, and street. That would be it primarily. Okay.
Correct. And the brick, little brick inlay to tie it into our theme downtown, with the little 2.5, 3 foot brick inset.
I really, in addition to those two things, and I know this would really require a lot more discussion. Two more comments I have. I think focusing on infrastructure in all of its manifestations, whether it's electrical, sewer, water, all of those things, that's incredibly critical for our town, because we talk about attracting people, attracting industry. If we don't have the infrastructure to support it, we don't have anything. So that's a given. I think we need to do that for sure. But something, and this is maybe the controversial part, potentially, I think it would be great to find some way to do something to increase activities for youth. I think that covered swimming pool, maybe even in conjunction with increased opportunities at the rec center, I think that would be a really great expenditure of money. Just increased opportunity for youth. That's my input.
Thank you.
Ms. Ogletree.
Coming off of what Aaron just said, I agree a lot about infrastructure, and Mike, like we talked about when we met, I see that as the preeminent thing that we should be concerned about right now with the development that's coming our way. And I'm less inclined to support things that are decorative as opposed to things that stabilize the things that make us a town, which are our infrastructure. The other thing that I wanted to know about, in the materials that you all sent out, there was another category that it seemed like money like this could be dedicated to, and that was stabilization arrangements for kind of known or expected emergent situations. And if we have known or expected emergent situations related to our water or our sewer, I'm wondering if we should not keep it in such a category so that when and if those things fail, before we get to them, in finishing them, we have the money to deal with those emergencies. I'm very concerned that we won't have that money when and if that happens before we get to doing the work. So I'm wondering if has staff talked about that concept at all?
Ms. Ogletree, I think one of the things, and I agree with you, although I think that when we have failures, whether it's sewer or water, gas, electrical, you know, there are funds that we can draw down for that, you know, is in our budget that we can use some of those, most of those funds, or all of those funds for sometimes. I think that putting all of that money into something was pretty broad, and I think according to our information, it says that you cannot, we have to be a little bit more pointed as to how we're going to allocate or dedicate that money to. Mr. Valentine, if I'm wrong, can you correct me there, or if you can add to it, please?
You're correct, Mayor, and to Councilwoman Ogletree's point, we have over 12, almost $13 million, and we're only committing 6. The rest is kept for emergency operations as such. And I would, not to throw her under the bus, defer to Cheryl if she has anything to add to that. But yeah.
So can you hear me? This is Cheryl.
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah. So if the situation were to arise, as Councilwoman Ogletree mentioned, again, by resolution, you would be able to uncommit those funds and recommit them for that type of situation. It's not an ordinance, it doesn't require a first and second meeting. It could even be an emergency declaration where council would free up those funds for an emergency such as that. As stated earlier, we do have $12 million in fund balance that needs to be committed. We did subtract out $5 million for regular emergencies. That it includes the 3 months of operations should anything happen, and then those other smaller types of emergencies. So that's why we had recommended $5.4 million to be committed. However, that amount did grow because of the marijuana and sales tax. We over collected this year, and that's kind of where we are. We need to get that 6.6 committed. We are getting narrowed down to specifics. I do think that just saying infrastructure is not specific enough. If you're going to say infrastructure, you say infrastructure from exit 13 all the way past the Sheriff's Department, if that makes sense. Any questions?
I think I would just feel more comfortable if we had done the strategic plan discussion and review that we need to do, because if we commit this money, then the plans will go for whatever that thing is, and we'll spend money towards whatever that thing is. And if an emergency happens, that money may not be there at that point. Because all of these things that we're talking about are actual things that the city will do if we authorize them. I'm understanding. So I'm just wondering, when will we have our plan in place that we are addressing those infrastructure problems, because they will come, and they will be devastating if we don't deal with them.
Mr. Ogletree, one of the questions that I have, and I think maybe an answer to that, and I think I mentioned this before, is that we can revisit this on a yearly basis, a semi-annual basis, or a quarterly basis for any changes that may occur. So let's say in 3 months we see an emergency that you're talking about, we can always revisit this and say, okay, we need to pull money from this one and allocate it to something else. I'm not sure if that helps a little bit.
If I can,
Get that.
if I can interrupt. I'm sorry, I'll interrupt.
Go ahead.
So if council commits these funds by the end of the year, and then you do have your meeting, you know, the strategic plan, right at that point, you might walk out of there and reallocate for commitment, because I'm sure that what we commit today, we're not going to get done by the time, before you have this strategic planning meeting I'm sure COVID's going to go away sooner than later so that we can meet in person.
We can't hear you.
That makes
Ms.
sense.
Olson.
I like that conduct because I'm comfortable knowing the issues that we have dealt with. And so can you hear me now?
Yes.
For some reason, it says poor network connection. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying I'm more comfortable with that approach, but I do want us to continue truly making an effort to talk strategic plan, analyze it, and make decisions so that we are addressing those things on a going forward basis and not just leaving it for let's wait for the emergency and handle it then, because it's only going to be more expensive doing things as an emergency from my experience. I could be wrong, but that's what my thinking is. And as far as I had one technical question, what is the $300,000 for Eagle Rock subdivision? I've forgotten. What would that do?
So that is when Eagle Rock failed, we called in the bond. They actually, rather than put a bond up, they put an irrevocable letter of credit. We called that letter of credit, and the bank wrote us a check for $280,000 to finish Eagle Rock. Should anybody come forward, that money is set aside for that subdivision. It's a performance and payment type situation.
So you're saying we have some kind of obligation to pay that money?
I'm sorry, what?
You're saying we have some sort of legal obligation to pay that money? Is that what you're saying?
It's kind of a legal obligation that we required from the developer to, if you don't finish this, the city will take this money and finish the project in case you sold any lots. Well, no lots were sold. The bank still holds it. It is specifically for the Eagle Rock subdivision, and that's up behind, basically behind Allendale. The initial phase was for, I believe, 15 lots. We're looking at trying to utilize that, do the improvements to help with our current housing situation, but that money is dedicated to the Eagle Rock subdivision.
Okay. I think that's all I have for right now.
Yeah, and just maybe a little further explanation, and to add on to what Mike was saying, is that we could take that money and upgrade or do something with the utilities that would possibly go into that section, so that as time comes that somebody wants to develop it, like he said, it'd make it more feasible.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shu?
Yeah, not to repeat any of that, but I think the 5 Points Colorado commercial exit would be a good project to do. And thank you, Mike, for putting that Garfield lighting in, because it is dark up that way. Also a question, Mike, on the landscaping on the exits, if you go to other towns like Pueblo and Springs and these places, those exits are really fixed up nice. Does the state do that, or does the city actually do those?
Actually, the city participates, and they do the landscaping and maintenance. We're going through that now with Exit 11 as they go through the design and the amenities they put in there. State pays for a good amount, but then it's up to the city to maintain and keep those going. So the Pueblo exits, Pueblo did contribute some, and so that's why I put $100,000 into Exit 11 for enhancements to that and moving forward.
Okay, and I also like to, get, I know it'll be a long time down the road, but that water treatment plant between the Trinidad Lake, when I was on council, we had brought that up and talked about it. I think that would be a great project for Trinidad if we could ever get something going on that. So that's it for me. Thank you, Mike. You did a good job on this stuff.
Mr. DeBono?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mike, for everything that you've done. You've spent a lot of time and effort. Touching what Karen and Frank mentioned, I think Exit 11 does need to be more attractive to help tourism in many capacities. The Riverwalk, like Karen said, is great. But, Mike, I need to ask you a question. The covered swimming pool, that's at the existing community center, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, back in the day, we had the Prospect Plaza, a lot of people, it was great for a while, but then over a period of time, it kind of fell by the wayside. A lot of people didn't support it. So I don't believe, $6 million may be an ill-advised decision on this project. I'm just saying.
Understood.
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Goodall?
I know we got our work cut out for us. There's so much we need to do. I think we need to definitely stay focused on the biggest bang for our buck. I think that the development up there and getting that sewer tied in to try to entice a developer to come in and build some homes is going to be very important. I think improving both the entrances into our town, the infrastructure down Main Street, getting that lighting, it's been in there. Businesses have been complaining about what everyone else on Main Street has and how that end hasn't been developed. I think is important along with 5 Points. There's so many projects and nowhere near enough money to go around. I even mentioned to Mike, we should be looking at a bike lane from Santa Fe Trail clear into the state park. Is even another project that I think would be a good bang for our buck with what's coming. So Main Street's important. 5 Points is important. The lighting on Garfield, believe me, coming from where I'm at to that part of town at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym is definitely dark, and it's not a very good area. We've got our work cut out for us. That's kind of where I'm at.
Like I said, from my end, one of the things is that I had brought up was doing some lighting along the Riverwalk, and I think that's part of that $1 million on the first line item. Am I correct, Mr. Valentine?
That is correct. Yes.
I think that they, look at Exit 11 and see what that's all about. Exit 14, I think that is an essential thing that we try to do something to look more attractive. If there's anything that we could maybe, if necessary, the completion of the commons area, that would be another item possibly to look at. I think the streetscape and infrastructure enhancement on Adams and Santa Fe Trail is important. Like I said, those are probably the most common ones that I've thought of. I'm agreeing with Mr. Goodall about it was going to give us the biggest bang for the buck and what we're trying to do now, but at the same time still doing things that are necessary where we can with infrastructure. I think that's real critical as well. And I think somebody mentioned about the recreation center. If I know that the pool is going to be pretty exorbitant, it's also questionable whether it, it's a nice amenity, but really is it something that we actually need? Are there any other amenities to that recreation center that we could do to, and other amenities for the younger generation, for the youth to be able to access and to have amenity and there's something else to do? That would be something to ask the people that run that recreation, see what questions they're getting from people saying this is what we'd like to have. Maybe something along them lines. So anyway, those are the things that I am most interested in. And moving forward, I do have some other questions on some of the other documents that we have. One of the things that it's talking about is about having an accounting policy that identifies the orderly use of our resources. Is that something that we have to bring forth in the form of a resolution or an ordinance before we even move on this, Mr. Valentine?
No, Mayor. This document was provided, Carol. It's from the GASB. It's government accounting. Anyway, Cheryl could jump in and tell us what the acronym GASB stands for, but I think we are compliant with all this. It's just that we have accumulated a lot of excess that we should direct. We're not here to be in the business of making money. We want to do what's right for the citizens and direct these funds moving forward. So, no, we are compliant.
Okay. And I don't, at this point in time, Mr. Valentine, I don't think we have any issues where we would need to allocate any money for stabilization that I can see. Is that, what do you think?
Stabilization as far as what, Mayor?
Well, it talks about, you know, if there's anything that we can anticipate for to direct any money to stabilize something for what kind of a one-time use, I guess, things that may come up. That's the way I read it.
Right, and that's why we have 12, almost 13 million, and we're holding back basically 6 million and directing this for those emergencies and stabilization that we have those available.
Okay, so on that same thing, can we can have a certain amount in unrestricted funds, correct? Off of this money?
Correct.
And what percentage is that? 5%?
I'm not understanding the question there.
Well, because isn't there, on off of all this money that we have, that we can put a percentage of money into an unrestricted fund rather than being committed or assigned? Am I correct?
So the committed, assigned, and unassigned are all in an unrestricted fund. The restricted fund is what we have to keep by state statute to run government specific purposes for dedicated taxes and revenues. But in the unrestricted funds, you have 3 categories: the committed, the assigned, and the unassigned. And our auditor recommends that we commit those funds.
So he's right.
They are
so committing 100% of the funds is what you're saying. Okay.
No, Mayor, we're not committing 100%. 5 million is going to be unassigned.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so where do we go from here, Mike?
No,
that's the $6 million question.
Right. So if Cheryl could go up to 5 points and carry that over the 1 million, and again, this is just an estimate. Well, she carried the whole thing over, so that leaves us 659. Before I bring a resolution forward for council consideration, I will take a look at this. I will get better estimates as well as I can, because we have to do this at our next, well, we have December 1st meeting and December 15th meeting to get this done. Cheryl would prefer December 1st.
Is there a chance there'd be a multiplying effect due to grants for some of this? I mean, we could accomplish more with that, right?
Yes, we would leverage all of these funds to match grants if possible and get correct. But I heard a few things. I'm looking at the list. So we have down at the bottom, Cheryl, what do we have? 659 still to commit. Let me work on these estimates before I bring them forward. Some of those, like Garfield lighting, we figured we could do out of the CIP. There's others that at the highway entrances that we put towards CIP. Let us massage this, and I will get something back to you before the next meeting. If that's all right.
Sounds good to me. Okay. All right, any other questions?
By the way, I appreciate all the hard work that went into the spreadsheet, but there's somebody that's running the spreadsheet that had a lot of, it gave me a lot of help. Cheryl was instrumental in checking my math and my formulas and my spelling. So thanks, Cheryl, too.
Cheryl, thank you, and I think we have a great team, and you guys work well together, and so thank you for all the work that you're putting into this.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, let's go on to item 5, community readiness. That was something that I had brought up, and council had said okay, and what we did is we turned that over to Miss Ogletree to kind of reach out to some of the community people in the community to come up with some thoughts as to what community readiness means. Does it mean we need additional amenities? What are some of the thoughts that she's able to find out? So Ms. Ogletree, go ahead and take it from here, please.
And Mayor, based on our conversation earlier today, this is just kind of an update of where things are
Right.
because I'm not finished with what I'm doing, and nor is it exclusive to me that I'm gathering this information. I think the mayor just wanted somebody to kind of take the ball and run with it, but I think all of us are hearing from people in our lives about what they think Trinidad needs to address what's coming, which is a great deal more visitors and a great deal more residents. And so I've talked with some business representatives, contractors, new residents, longtime residents, prior city council member. I need to talk with people in the education sphere, some religious leaders, financial sector kind of people, and other realms. And I am asking them the questions along the lines that the mayor suggested, like what amenities do we need? What sort of services do we need? But quite often when I'm talking with people, they want to talk about problems that they've noticed and how we could address problems. And so when we finally have this conversation, I can share some of the things that they have said that they would like, people have said that they would like to see change at the city of Trinidad itself from a welcoming point of view towards developers and having more of a perspective of how can we make this work rather than no, you can't do that because the code says that. So I've heard a lot of that kind of things, but other things that people have thought that we need to focus on include transportation around town, the idea of having some kind of a shuttle service that's free that takes people around from various shopping areas, residential areas, just to improve people getting out and being able to get to places. Parking, a lot of emphasis on a need for more parking downtown and to use the parking that's underneath the overpass more effectively and possibly light that area better so that it's more useful for nighttime events. Housing options, that the city needs to encourage development of residential options that lead to affordable housing, code enforcement issues that people have brought up that they'd like to see more visible code enforcement, including criminal enforcement too. Some kind of, they appreciate all the work that the police department is doing and addressing, but they'd like to see things come to completion more often with what happens with someone who's been arrested for something and found guilty and what eventually happens. Customer service is an area that people think that Trinidad could work on and possibly look at doing a 6-week program through the college to train servers or people in the service industry so that they are good to go, and possibly an incentive that they get paid a little bit more if they've gone through that program. Broaden the range of choices at restaurants, address infrastructure issues. And then one recently that came up just personally, I had some work done at my house by Comcast, and I was talking with the repairman about my cable box, and he was explaining that Trinidad is the last place in the United States that has the kind of cable box that we have. And the reason that we have them is because the equipment that we're using and we're feeding off of, some of which was installed in the 1970s. And it simply can't handle the data that comes with HDTV. So that's why we have spotty cable. That's why we get spotty internet. And he suggests that we think about approaching Comcast and letting Comcast know what's going on in Trinidad and what's on the horizon so that they have some motivation to invest here and get rid of this old equipment that is, in the case of my cable box, it's 10 years past its end of life. So, and see if we can work with Comcast to get some of the equipment that they are going to be mothballing in other parts of the state because they've exceeded the capacity of that equipment, and get it down to Trinidad so that we're at least at the level that we can get HDTV, and just to address the upgrades that we need. So talked with the mayor about this afternoon and suggested that I talk with some folks and get a little bit more information, and then that the council get behind some kind of request to Comcast to come down and upgrade the system and put some money in here so that we are ready to handle what's coming. So those are just some broad categories of ideas that I'm hearing so far. If there's anyone out there listening and they would like to talk with me, or I'm sure any of us, please do contact us and me and let us know what your thoughts are about what you think Trinidad needs to do to prepare.
Aaron, good job, by the way, very good job. I appreciate all the work that you've done so far. And just maybe a suggestion, it sounds like, when you put together the final report, you could list it as categories, because some of this stuff is stuff like could be done as far as amenities, other things, or infrastructure, other maybe some of the stuff we could do in-house. Others may have to be done by other organizations or entities, or such as Comcast that you're talking about. So I think we could do that. So, but great job. I appreciate all the work that you've done. I know you still have some more work to do, and thank you. So let's get with the rest of council, see if they have any thoughts or recommendations. We'll start with Mr. Williamson.
I have no comment.
Okay. Mr. Shu?
No questions.
Mr. DeBono?
Well, I agree with Aaron. I think every community should have a readiness model in place that integrates, not only what she touched on, parking, code of enforcement, so on, but also with culture and resources, and also with what's going on with the health issue with the COVID.
Okay. Mr. Goodall?
Aaron, thanks for all your hard work. I know that stuff like this can consume you and take up a lot of time. Appreciate all your hard work on this. That's all I have.
Ms. Grego?
Hold on. Okay, I'm unmuted now, sorry. the mayor and I were talking about community readiness, and it seems like the punch that is now came faster than anybody ever. So when we're talking readiness, I thought it would talk about community getting ready for people downtown, and we're talking about talking local job, Aaron. I think too tonight about a great education, herding cats. I'm sorry, been there, done that. It doesn't work, but it's something to think about. We could do a campaign where you say, yeah, people that are downtown need to be knowledgeable about what Trinidad has to offer.
And, this is for council's information. Like I said, the reason why I brought this up and when I did is, and I've talked to the people with the partners for the Fisher's Peak project, and one of the things we'll be able to take this document that Ms. Ogletree is going to prepare. We will pass that on, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it on to them when they are starting to look, now we are actually beginning to look at do the master plan. And like I said, the master plan is going to cover probably from like the 5,000 or 10,000 foot level. This stuff that she is doing gets down more to the basics of the community, what the community wants. So it's going to help in a couple of different areas. So be able to integrate all that together. So I think that's a very good start to what she's done. Mr. Valentine, do you have any comments about what she's doing?
No, Mayor, I appreciate her work. All good points, all things. It's a huge task, along with infrastructure, along with our previous conversation, but to get together and put it in a plan so that we have some model and guidance that council and staff can look at to direct our decisions going forward. So I appreciate it.
It's true. Okay. Any other comments that one's thought of? Okay. Go on to item 6, which is discussion of other agenda items. Has council thought of any other agenda items for work sessions in the near future? Mr. Williamson?
None at this time, Mayor.
Ms. Ogletree, do you have anything additional that you would like to bring forward?
No, not right now, but I meant to say, if any of you know people in particular that you think would have good information for us, would you please let me know who those people are and I will contact them.
Okay. Mr. Shu?
No, none at this time, Mayor.
Mr. DeBono?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Goodall?
I think that, let's see, yeah, I'm unmuted. I think that our discussion on the expenditure of that money is going to be important at the very next possible work session once Mike gets some more numbers. So I think that's going to have to be big on our list and allow enough time and not a lot of other stuff there so we can get through that and lock that down so we can use it.
And we may consider having everybody in council chambers that night to have that discussion, because I think it might be easier to discuss. I think that would probably be a good idea. So when we have that discussion, Mr. Valentine, let's see if we can possibly plan on all being here. Ms. Grego, any other items?
Just in response to Aaron's question, maybe talk to some small business people downtown, Aaron. What frustrates them as far as business and things like that. I think that would be important. As far as the agenda for items for the work session, I've contacted Mr. Valentine and asked that we get a forum or maybe just a discussion with some local people that are knowledgeable about housing and how we can alleviate the housing shortage that we have now. So I asked him to look into it, and that's something that I'd like to see on a work session. That's it.
Okay. As you can see from tonight's work session, we have a tremendous amount of work ahead of us. Staff has a tremendous amount of work that they've got to do for us before it even gets to us. So with that being said, there's just so much going on in town, and a lot of people ask me, and I'm sure ask you as well, what's going on sometimes. And my answer to them is, okay, how much time do you have for me to tell you? So there's just a lot of stuff that we have to deal with, and good things. That's what's good. Is there's some positive, very positive things that are happening in our community. So I think we have a council that can really work through these together, and I appreciate all the input that everyone gives. So with that, I just want to say have a happy Thanksgiving, a safe and healthy one, and maybe we'll get a little snow tomorrow, like they're saying, have a little moisture. So good night, and like I said, have a healthy and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
This conference is no longer being recorded.